Welcome, everybody, to episode 60 of UnHacked. Cybersecurity made simple, or at least that's the goal, because it isn't really that simple. But we try to break it down for the business owners out there who wear a million hats, and this is hat number 1,000,001. We know you got a lot to do, so we're here week after week to tell you about what makes the most difference with the least amount of money. At least that's the goal. We'll do some quick introductions. I am Justin Shelley, CEO of Phoenix IT Advisors. I help you build your business, and then I protect it from the hackers, usually from Russia. Mario likes to fight the whole world at once. After the hackers, then we've got the government will come in and fine you if you get breached. And if that's not enough, then the attorneys are going to come and sue you for whatever's left. That's what we're trying to avoid. That's what I do. I work in Texas, Utah, and Nevada. And I am here, as always, with my good friend, Bryan. Bryan, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and who you do it for.
Yeah, Bryan Lachapelle, President CEO of B4 Networks. I do everything Justin does and also help you get rid of the headaches and frustrations that come with dealing with technology. And I also help you sleep better at night.
Oh shit. You took Mario's line. Mario, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and who you do it for.
Mario Zaki, CEO of Mastech IT, located here in beautiful New Jersey. We help small to medium-sized businesses do what these guys do, but we just do it better. And we help you guys just get better every day, 1% at a time. I think that's what it says. Specialize in keeping business owners have the ability to sleep better at night. You make me mess up my own line now.
Good. Well, listen, we've got some inside jokes rolling. Anybody that listens on a regular basis gets it. The rest of you are just out to lunch, don't know what the hell we're talking about. And in that camp lies Adriel Desautels. God, I slaughter your name, Adriel. Thank you for being here today. And
pleasure.
I apologize for my co-hosts. Adriel, you have a hell of a story and a hell of a job. So I don't want to slaughter it. I'm going to introduce basically, as you said, I love the line, you are a good bad guy. Is that right? Or a bad good guy? I don't know which it is, but you do the shit that we try to protect against, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That has our slogan, right? We protect you from people like us.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about you and your business.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Netragard. Netragard is an offensive security term, and we are a service firm, and we deliver a range of things from your sort of your entry-level penetration test or the industry standard all the way up to your bona fide red team, where we're replicating the real threat. So I guess comparison to what everybody else said, we do sort of the opposite.
Yeah. That's you keep your friends close, your enemies closer, and here you are.
It gives business owners headaches and frustrations.
Right.
We do, but we save them from the big ones.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So we hack you first before the bad guys do, hopefully.
Hopefully. So tell me, you had the line that as we prep for these, the thing that caught my attention more than anything else is you talked about an ROI, a return on investment of effective security. Now, usually when we talk about cybersecurity, we are talking about costs that the best case scenario is you light the money on fire and you never see any benefits or results from it because you don't get hacked, right? It's almost like insurance. You're paying to hopefully not experience it. Talk about ROI. This is interesting.
Yeah, so the return on investment of effective security, not good security per se, but effective security is equal to the cost and damages of a single breach, and that number keeps on going up. So I think last year, IBM said it was something along the lines of $4.8 million, right? So if you're thinking in the context of just like a $40,000 penetration test, for example, it's about a 12,000% ROI. But people don't think about security in terms of ROI. They think about it in terms of what can I spend the least amount of money on that's going to protect me. And what ends up happening is they end up buying stuff that makes them feel good or that maybe creates a false sense of security. Then when they get breached, they can add the cost of all of that to the cost and damages because it wasn't effective.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Very good point. Bryan, Mario, have you ever talked with your clients, your prospects about the ROI on the cybersecurity services that you sell?
Not particularly ROI specifically, like a percentage, but we do talk about what risks they have, what risks they're willing to bear, what the ramifications on their business and their outcomes would look like if they got breached, and then present our solution as here's what we would do to mitigate the areas of risk you have. And in most cases, they usually take that and run with it. But we've never actually showed, like if you got a breach, it would be $1 million, and our services are X per month, and so it's 5,000%, ROI. We've never done that, but it's an intriguing way of looking at it.
Mario,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Not really. Like nothing. Like pretty much exactly what Brian said. Occasionally, sometimes we will talk about like stuff that we've mentioned earlier, like the investment of putting in, in technology, faster computers, and stuff like that. You'll get like better production out of your employees. That's pretty much the extent of the conversation we've had, but nothing to actually show there's a return on the investment.
And here's another question, because the reason we don't talk about this, I believe, is because there's an element of uncertainty to it, right? So I'm going to say, you're going to spend this much money to prevent a possibility, right?
Right.
A true ROI is a guarantee. Like this is a benefit or it's a cost. It's hard. It's in the, you can quantify it. But in cybersecurity, there's that element of what if. Now, let me frame that a different way. Let's say that I, as a small business owner, don't invest any time, any money, or any energy, effort, internal effort, culture, whatever we want to call it, on cybersecurity. What is the likelihood that I'm going to get breached in the course of doing business?
100%.
100%.
100%.
100%.
So maybe, and as we each episode, I learn something new, and I come out with a new thing that I probably need to be doing with my clients and prospects and selling this, evangelizing this message. Maybe we need to flip the dialogue a little bit, because it is 100%. In fact, we can, right now, any of us can go to any of our clients, pull the logs on their firewall, and show that they are currently right now being attacked, right?
Correct.
By foreign countries, by state-sponsored shit. Like, it's happening right now all day long, every day. So, 100%. All right. Let's,
not just from Russia.
Listen, Mario, if we're going to duke this out, I'll duke it out. The only time... Thank the gods, the only time I ever dealt with an actual breach where I was hand-to-hand combat was the Russians. So I'm always going to have a soft spot in my heart for my Russian competitors. That is who I fight. All right, so let's talk a little bit, Adriel, about what got you into this line of work, because this is, I don't know, it's intriguing. I love it. I love watching the behind-the-scenes stuff of ethical hackers, or whatever we want to call it. A lot of times, this is a bad guy turned a good guy. Is that your case?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
that's not fun.
I know. Episode over. Can you make up a story, please?
I could.
Jesus.
But I got some good ones. I mean, because a lot of the times when you do what we do, the ethics behind what you do are not fully understood. Like for ourselves, for example, right? We were involved in effectively brokering, creating, and selling cyber weaponry. And this weaponry can be dual use. You can, if you're an oppressive regime, you could use it to quash reporters or go after families. Or if you're law enforcement, you could use it to combat human trafficking and child pornography. So that's something that I actually was very heavily involved in. And people called me everything from a dweebish mercenary to, the god of war. And, I mean, they said all kinds of things because it is sort of a dual use thing. So I guess I can get pretty dark, but I've always kept the ethics about me. I've always believed in, to look at myself in the mirror and think I'm a good person.
So tell me how you got into this line of work.
Yeah, so I'm the kind of guy, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to say, watch me. Just my personality. And so my dad picked up a Tandy 1000 way back when, and he told me I couldn't touch it. And that just made me want to touch it. So I started playing with that, started learning BASIC, and then down the road, he got a modulator, demodulator, right, a modem. So I realized I could dial random numbers and connect to other computers. And then when I was curious, I eventually learned I could look around, then we finally, had ISPs, and the whole thing just kind of, grew, and my curiosity just grew. I just wanted to know everything that I could know, I guess. I don't know. Early on, I realized that there was a need for people that would do what the bad guys do, like really do it, to help people understand how they're going to get breached. So you can give them a sort of a good recipe for defense, right? Because, I mean, you can try to protect yourself against the bad guys, but if you don't know how they're going to attack you,
Right.
even if you look at like industry norms, you don't know how to protect yourself, right? And so I thought, all right, this is something we can do. And so we started doing this in the late 90s, along with some of the cyber weapons stuff that we did in my first company. And it just kind of turned into a real industry, and now here we are.
Yeah. Bryan, Mario, you got any thoughts or origin stories you want to share?
So you said if we tell you something that you can't do it, you'll say, "Well, watch me," right? So
Think the same.
yeah, I don't think you can take down our competitors. I don't think you can do it.
Remember the ethical boundary. How much are you going to pay?
I was just going to tell him he can't sign over his company to me, and now he's going to have to do it.
Yeah, there you go. See, I like it. That's how I think too. So.
I guess maybe one of the I don't know if we've gotten to this point yet, but I'm curious, like what do most businesses still get wrong when either hiring a security expert like us or an internal person? Like, what are they still not doing right?
Yeah. So, do you want me to give you the really candid, blunt answer?
Well,
Yes.
I think the people that are watching will absolutely want the blunt answer.
They're going about it entirely wrong. So, the industry that is responsible for building technology that defends other businesses are fully aware of the industry that's responsible for testing defenses and being offensive, right, in most cases. So what you end up with is sort of a self-defeating situation. You end up with businesses that are trying to protect themselves, and they're listening to what most of the technology vendors market and advertise and promise. They buy their technology, then they deploy their technology, then they go to another business that does the testing to determine if something actually works properly, right? And they use commercial off-the-shelf tools that these defensive technologies are already aware of. So these companies pass with flying colors, and they end up, oh yeah, you're safe. We're not going to get, nobody got in, didn't find anything, but it's because the defensive tools neutralize the offensive tools, right? Then you get people like us, or the bad guys for that matter, and we don't use commercial tools. We build our own. We come up with our own methodologies, just like the bad guys do, right? And like a slogan, walk right in the front door. And people ask us why that happens. How is it you get past stuff? Well, it's because we're not using things that these technologies are aware of. Now, you take it even a step farther, and it's not to say that these technologies aren't useful, because they're absolutely useful. I mean, I definitely think people should take these things seriously. They should deploy them, but they're never going to be as good as they're advertised to be, in part because they only know what they know, and the threat actors always define the new threat, right? So there's sort of that thing going on. Then the other thing, and I think a really big mistake, kind of talked about earlier, people build their defenses without first understanding how a threat is going to potentially align with and exploit their risks, right? So it reminds me of like the Maginot Line in France, that big fortified, line where they were trying to keep the Nazis out of France. They just walked right around it, right? And it was because they built their defenses without really thinking about what the threat was going to do. And that happens all the time, So I mean, and honestly, most of the breaches that we see, when I hear the stories about how things were breached, I'm like, well, only if somebody had actually tested you, only if you've been exposed to a real threat, then you could have used this technology more effectively. I mean, case in point, not to harp on, Equifax, but when Equifax was breached, it was an Apache Struts vulnerability that was exploited. Hackers hit a web server, they got in, they began scanning the network, found other targets, all of our data got stolen, right? If they had had a real test, and they knew this was a vulnerable system, but if they had had a real test and experienced somebody actually breaching, they could have done something as simple as deploy honeypy, just an open source honeypot behind that, prevented the entire breach. Not even fix the struts vulnerability, just prevent the breach. Not the breach, actually, I should say damages, right? Because breach doesn't matter, damages matter.
Tell me, Adriel, for our audience, talk about a honeypot. What is that in normal people language?
Yeah, so it's a computer system or device that sits on a network, and does absolutely nothing. It literally sits there and does nothing. It offers services, and it might look appealing to an attacker. The instant somebody communicates with that system, it just goes berserk and sends alerts and says, "Oh my God, somebody's touching me." And you know that that event is going to be something you really have to pay attention to, because there's no legitimate reason for that system to ever be touched, right? And when you're breaching an infrastructure, I mean, these are honestly, honeypots are our biggest pain when we're breaching an infrastructure. When you're breaching an infrastructure and you begin to do discovery and you find that there's a honeypot there, you don't know that there's honeypots until after you hit the honeypot.
Right.
You know? So yeah, they're great.
Kind of like
Smart.
landmines for the bad guys.
That's actually exactly what they are, and they really
Yeah.
suck.
Frontline, pretty much defense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honeypots and so they have the same thing, like tokens. There are files that you can deploy that are similar. Honestly, of all the things you run across, those are the things that give us the biggest trouble.
Yeah. So tell me, you mentioned that early on, was it your first one? You discovered a SQL injection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talk
Yeah.
and first, I'm going to ask you to talk about what a SQL injection is, and then tell us what you found and why that mattered and how it kind of shaped your business.
Sure. So an easy way to describe SQL injection. So you have a web application that interacts with a SQL database or Microsoft SQL database, whatever it is in the backend. In this case, it was Microsoft SQL. Databases accept all sorts of commands. So if you're working with a database, you can create your query strings, you can ask it for any kind of data, you can do whatever. Web applications have a predefined set of commands that they'll send to the database to extract very specific information. And the users of applications are typically, and they're supposed to be restricted by what the actual application allows them to view and access. So in the case of a bank, you have a database, you might be able to do something like, dump passwords or extract hashes, or back in the day, there was the XP command shell, which enabled you to actually run commands as if you had a shell on the system. So what we ended up finding was a vulnerability in a web application. This is actually how Netragard came into play, because who became our customer couldn't find a vendor that would deliver what he called a real test. They were doing the typical thing, which is, you do the offensive testing against the technology already knows that you're there and it defeats it, right? So they challenged us and pushed us and assisted, and we did a test for them. And I think it was something like 4 minutes time we took their domain. And we took their domain because the application had a blind SQL injection vulnerability, which is slightly different. You discover it through sort of timing tests. It had a blind SQL injection vulnerability that sat behind some kind of defensive technology. I can't remember what it was. It was a while ago. And we thought, well, to get past this technology and to exploit whatever is here, let's try writing our entire payload backwards and wrapping it in reverse, which is just bizarre that there's even a reverse function there. So we did, and we got a shell. And the shell that we got was with system privileges, and it turns out that we were also domain admin. That was like really common back in the day. Everybody ran everything as system. So,
yeah.
And so that's how we kind of came to be. They started talking about us, and people kept on coming.
Bryan, Mario, have you ever come across a SQL injection attack?
Not for a while.
We don't deal with a lot of web applications in with our clients.
Yes, same here.
Yeah.
All right.
Leave it to the experts.
Yeah.
We don't like touching.
We'll find it. We don't fix it.
So was that, if I remember right, wasn't that your first client with your current company?
Yeah. So this was a customer from my prior company, Snowsoft, that came to us because they knew that we could hack shit, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, they couldn't find another vendor, and so we actually incorporated Netragard so we could get the contract set and all that, and do this work for them. Yeah, they were the first one, and they were so impressed by what we did that they talked about it. Other people kept on coming. And I remember actually they asked, why is it that other vendors, other people we've worked with haven't found these vulnerabilities? And my answer was straightforward, is they're using tools that are commercial off-the-shelf tools. These tools are using known methods of testing and scanning and probing, and your defenses know these things are coming in, so they're blocking them, right? They're defeating them.
Right.
We didn't do that. We actually came in and we actually manually looked at things because that's what we do. We're researchers, right? So we look at things and we say, oh, this looks interesting. Let's try wrapping this thing backwards and reverse, you know? And that's the same thing that happens to the bad guys.
So that brings up a really great point. Like, these vendors probably made sure their systems were compliant, right? And so, like, when we talk about putting things in place and we're compliant with the rules and regulations, there's a big difference between that and being secure. So
Yeah.
what is the difference between compliant and being secure?
Boy, so prior to 2003, 2004, when PCI DSS became a thing, right? Penetration testing meant that you emulated what the bad guys do, and you tested people just like the bad guys, so people could protect themselves against that threat and prevent a data breach. When MasterCard and Visa got together and created PCI DSS, they said everybody has to have a pen test, but they failed to define what that entailed and what that meant and what the objective was at a really low level. It was more of a bureaucratic thing, but it was mandated. If you wanted to, do any kind of financial stuff on, like, it was mandated. So what ended up happening around 2004, 2005, businesses just started popping up left and right that offered penetration testing services, right? But they weren't. These were, right? Exactly. They were offering vulnerability scans using something like
port scanners.
Yeah, exactly. And they were masquerading these things as penetration tests. And then, people started saying, well, you need to get a manual penetration test because these scans just don't work, and plus there has to be some kind of differentiator. And they all said, all right, cool, we'll do a manual test. We're going to run the scan. We're going to manually verify the results and then call that a test. Right?
Yeah.
So that's compliance. And that's the difference between, it's like testing a squirt gun. It's like testing body armor with a squirt gun or with live rounds.
Yeah, it reminds me of the fact, because we've talked about this a lot, that, in order to be an IT provider, you need nothing. You could literally get a business license in whatever state, city, province, pick one of the above country, and you can say, I'm an IT guy and I can do your cybersecurity. There's no requirement for anything legally or certification wise. And so, yeah, compliant is checking the box. Secure is actually being secure.
Yeah, and what ends up happening is, people talk about compliance and they want compliance, and they look for the cheapest possible solution because they think that compliance is going to protect them, or frankly, they might not care about security, but they need compliance to operate, right? One of my favorite quotes was the former CEO of Target, Greg Steinhafel. He said something to the effect of, I don't get it. We were just certified as being PCI compliant. We suffered a breach anyway, right? That quote is the embodiment of all of this. And when you see people breached, when you see organizations get breached, conceptually, they made the same mistake, right? You got to take it seriously. You got to do the real thing.
So I have a question for you. So when you do find like a vulnerability or something, like for example, Microsoft SQL, what do? Do you contact like Microsoft and submit this to them? I mean, Microsoft probably is open to it, but what about some other vendors?
Yeah.
Do they ever try to like really push back at you for anything?
So there's a lot of ways to answer that. So back in 98, 2001, sometime around then, with my first company, we did some research, vulnerability research and exploit development actually against HP's True 64. We targeted True 64 because it was a different architecture, and at the time they were talking about how absolutely secure this thing was. I believe they said it was a C-level something or other, right? We found, I don't remember how many vulnerabilities. I remember like 70, 76, and I remember most of them were remote, they'd exploit and give us a root shell, whatever. So we made it a point to contact HP, and we said, hey, look, we don't want money for this. We don't want anything. We just want to make you aware of this, right? We want to tell you about these vulnerabilities so you can fix them. They said, oh, sure, great, thank you. And then they sent us this threatening letter in the mail afterwards saying we violated the Computer Crime Act of 1984 or whatever it was. So we contacted them again. We said, we didn't really violate anything. We just found these flaws in the system that you said was really secure, but it isn't. And we wanted to help you, right? And they said, oh, sorry, just big misunderstanding, right? Then they sent us a threat for the DMCA saying we violated the DMCA and we're going to come after you and do this and that. And it dawned on us at that point, they're just trying to quash our research. So we made it a point to contact the EFF. We knew a person out of the EFF, Jennifer Granick, who's absolutely awesome. And we made it a point also to let the media know what was going on. That turned into a big shitstorm really fast for them. And we never got sued or anything. And that instance actually is one of the instances that helped to forge what was then known as responsible disclosure, believe it or not. And the whole concept of responsible disclosure was something that I was really standing behind for a while. And then I did an about face when I had a realization that I wasn't protecting people. I was actually putting them at more risk. And that's something a lot of people have a hard time understanding, but it's actually simple. When you notify people of vulnerabilities in their systems or you publish information about a vulnerability, ideally, people are going to take that seriously and fix their systems, right? In reality, ideally, right? In reality, that doesn't happen. In reality, when you publish a new vulnerability, the threat actors pick it up real fast. Yeah. And they'll write an exploit, or they'll turn that into something that they can monetize real quick. And it's going to be faster than you can patch your networks, right? So really what we end up doing is we end up giving the bad guys this window in which they can breach people really quickly, and other people don't have time to react. And the defensive solutions aren't even up to par yet on maybe on how the attack works. Now, then there's this whole concept of, I guess, silent disclosure, which is when you quietly send something to the vendor and they fix it theoretically. So we had instances, I don't want to call anybody out for this, but we had instances where we found pretty critical vulnerability actually in one system. It was fully exploitable. We provided the exploit. It was all quiet. It took them 6 years to patch this thing. 6 years.
Good Lord.
Right? And there's no reason for that.
No.
Right? And then the other issue with this too is, like, you look at Microsoft Patch Tuesday. When Patch Tuesday happens, right, teams like mine will take that, reverse engineer that, find out how to exploit the vulnerabilities that were in that, and you get more tools and you can hack more stuff, right? So, right?
Nice.
That's what I was going to say. Doesn't Microsoft pretty much do this on a weekly basis? Is they pretty much announce like, okay, we found this or discovered this and we fixed it.
Yeah.
And and then the guys, the bad guys are probably the only ones that actually read it.
Yeah.
And then they're using it to their advantage, because you're not going to patch millions of computers.
No, I mean that's why we always get in with our engagements, is because we operate just like that, right? I mean, so the industry that's protecting people, they're not really protecting people, and the solutions like antivirus solutions, what they used to be called, if they really worked, there would be no malware, right? If intrusion prevention solutions actually work, there would be no intrusions. These things don't work perfectly. They work to a degree, and their value, just working to a degree, makes them something you need, but they're not absolute solutions, right? So the real issue and the real thing that people have to do is they have to understand there is never going to be a point where their infrastructure is impervious to, like, breach proof, right?
Yeah.
Ever. There's always a way in. You could fix your network today, 100% patch, no vulnerabilities, no 0 days, nothing. Tomorrow, I'm going to find something new, and I'm going to write an exploit, and I'm going to get in. But what you can do, if you work with somebody and they breach you like the bad guys will, you can understand how they're going to make way through your network, how they're going to access things, what their behavior is, and then you can put down those little landmines and booby traps, and you can build your security around how they're most likely to operate. So it's not a matter of preventing breaches. It's a matter of being sensitive enough to pick up the activity and then respond before damages are realized.
Yeah, that brings up a quote that I remember. It's there are two type of companies: those who have been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked.
Yep.
And so, one of the questions we were going to ask is, why should every business assume they've already been breached? And this is, I mean, you've already answered is,
They have.
if you assume that you've been breached already, you can set up your systems in a way that will notify you for the activity that is being generated when somebody is in your network, to notify you that somebody's there so that you can then take action
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
get them out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a funny statistic, not funny, but funny, I guess, in the recent Verizon data breach incident report. And what they said, and the way they framed it was kind of crafty. What they said was, the time to notification of breaches is shrinking. Like when people actually realize that they've been breached, that window is shrinking. And then they wanted to say, but that's not because people are getting better at it. It's just because ransomware threat actors are demanding ransomware sooner. So it's not that they detect these breaches. It's that the threat actors are saying, okay, we want our money now. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, a lot of people will go through that whole process. They'll suffer, ransomware breach. They'll pay, they won't pay, whatever. They think they're fine. They maybe even go and have some third party clean out the network and think they got the bad guys out. Next year, they're still on the network, and they have no idea. And again, you can't detect what you don't know, right? Like we have our own framework that we use for doing red team engagements. It's a fairly advanced C2 framework. You can't see our technology with commercial defensive technology. You can't see it because it doesn't know how it works, right? So yeah, it's you're going to be breached. If you have been breached, you probably won't know it unless your technology picks up on something behavioral, or you get lucky. And a part of being covert in these breaches too is you become your target as quickly as possible. If you know somebody is a security admin or a sysadmin, you take their credentials, you work as them, you authenticate like them, and you don't do anything that they wouldn't normally do per se, you're not going to trip any alarms. You can take the entire business.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So it's living off the land. I mean, it's amazing how unfair it is, right? Like as the guys that define the threat, right? The good guys, I should say. We're the good guys. As the guys that define the threat, we don't have to get it right every time. We can try it many times and get it right once, right? As the guys that are defending, you have to get it right every single time, and that's not possible because, I mean, even the security technology you deploy, like imagine the number of firewalls, even those things have exploitable vulnerabilities in them. So, but you don't know that. So you're doing everything you can do to protect things. You're doing your job right. There's a shit ton of value in that. But then there's just one unknown thing that nobody knows about, and everybody's vulnerable to it. So yeah, I think that shift in mindset, try to prevent breaches, but it's more about damage prevention. It's really about damage prevention.
Yeah. Now, what about remote management software, RMMs? Because that is, there's at least a dozen out there, at least more, probably more. But what about those? How do you, like those are stuff that, are out of most people's control, most MSPs' control, and unfortunately, sometimes when they find out, it's too late. Have you done any work with stuff like that and, recommendations,
Yeah, I mean,
best practice?
tangentially, I suppose, and maybe in some cases directly. We don't think about, when we're doing our work, we don't think about specific technologies, but we think instead about how to leverage what's available. So if we come across technology that allows us, and is within scope, to, say, access a wide range of different targets from a single point, we're going to leverage that. I think the way to think about it, though, is if you're going to be using any kind of remote management software from a centralized point, do the best that you can do to protect that centralized point. And back to the honeypot thing, you can actually set up honeypots in that, because you can set up domains that trigger when they're accessed, right? So you could do something like populate a profile or something with some kind of token that's designed to trigger when somebody touches it, and then when somebody goes in and touches that, they're not supposed to, because there's no reason to touch that, right? So there are different things that you can do there, and if you can pick that up when it's touched, hopefully you can prevent a breach from becoming catastrophic, right? But something I talked about, this might have even been back in the 90s, but convenience is the antithesis. It's the opposite of good security.
Yep.
Here we are in the world trying to make everything convenient and easy. Critical infrastructure is a key point. We have these systems that are designed in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, these antiquated systems that control critical infrastructure, power, water, all that. Somebody decided one day that they should put these things online because it's easy. Well, I mean, that was a really bad idea.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So when you think about like remote management software or automation software, it's not necessarily stuff that we're going to look for unless there's some reason to look for it. But if we find it, yeah, we're going to use it. So it's definitely stuff that has to be protected. I mean, and the unfortunate reality is, though, businesses like yours and others need that kind of technology to operate, and your customers need to have that kind of technology to operate. So again, attackers have the upper hand because we're going to use whatever you use to our advantage. It's just we don't have the same ethical, well, not we, but the bad guys don't have the same ethical basis, as the people on the defensive side of things have.
So Adriel, I'm sitting here and I've got my business owner hat on because we are. I live in the world of cybersecurity, so I understand this stuff. I can at least sit through this conversation and hear and process what you're talking about. But if I switch hats to my clients, the people that we do business with, not only am I lost, I'm depressed, I'm confused, I'm scared, and what I'm hearing is we're fucked and there's nothing we can do about it. Flip that script for me.
Yeah. So the first thing is to realize that you're fucked, but there is something you can do about it, right? So you don't have to have perfect security. And the reason people tend to think that they're totally screwed when they hear me talk about stuff like this is because they think, well, how do I keep people out? How do I prevent them from getting in? But again, it's not worrying about that. You don't have to worry about that. You have to take advantage of what the attacker doesn't know. The attacker doesn't know the inside infrastructure. It doesn't know how you lay things out. It doesn't know where sensitive information is. It doesn't know anything about your internal infrastructure unless they have inside help. And even then, they probably have limited knowledge, right? So what you can do to defend your network is you can set things up in such a way that they're enticing. But the things that are enticing are not the things that the attacker actually wants to go after. It's just things that they think they want to go after, right? So you can take advantage of, again, honeypots, canary tokens, whatever they might be, right? But you can also deploy different technologies to monitor behavior, right? You know that somebody is not supposed to do X, Y, and Z in this particular area. You set up technology to monitor that. So there are different things that you can do to detect the motion and the behavior and the access. And it's not prevention, but it's really early detection, right? Because you might not detect the breach. You might not even detect the use of malware, the deployment of malware, but you can definitely detect anomalies and strange behavior and strange access. And that's hugely effective.
Perfect. All right. So guys, we're going to, again, as the overwhelmed layman business owner listening to this, my head's about to blow up. I think there's good stuff here. I think I want to sign off though with the message of hope. So Adriel, thank you for that. Bryan and Mario, in that order, talk about, like, based on what we've learned today as a business owner, what actions do we need to take to fight this overwhelming? And I mean, like you said, Adriel, they've got the upper hand. How do we attack this? Bryan, what are your thoughts?
Well, a couple things that I picked up today. I'm actually already in process of thinking about how to make some changes internally. Is we put all the defensive systems in place, but we have some of our tools and systems that do have honeypot-ish things in them, but we don't have actual honeypots throughout our clients' networks, and that might be a good takeaway for me is assume they're already breached, assume that they're in the network. And how do you determine that they are? Which we have some of it, but maybe we can do a little bit better job there. And continuing to segregate and separate out the internal infrastructure at our clients to make sure that if they do get in, that they're limited as to what they can access As an example, something we learned last week is just separating out, the manufacturing plant from the front office, right? Making sure those are on separate networks. So if they breach one, they don't breach the other. And just being more intentional about making sure that, when somebody does get in, A, we can detect it, and B, we're limiting to the scope as to what they're doing, and also potentially wasting their time on something that is inconsequential and is useless information or systems.
Right. Okay, Mario, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just being proactive, setting up different things to, testing, what you think is going on, and making sure that, you're going through every scenario, setting up a honeypot, sometimes it's a pain in the ass, sometimes it's doable. We now know some experts that can assist in that matter, but it's kind of just testing everything that you're using.
Yeah. And I'm gonna kind of close up with what I say all the time, and this is the most frustrating thing that I hear when I'm trying to evangelize this message, which is really what I'm trying to do, is we're fine. And the counter to that is that if you feel safe, you are vulnerable. I don't want to spread fear, but unfortunately, that's the only thing that gets us to take action. If you are not afraid, you're fucked. I mean, there is no protection. You're done. Close up shop right now. Save yourself the headache and go do something else. But listen, guys, I'm sorry. If you're not afraid, you're not fighting and you don't understand what's going on out there. So be afraid, but do something about it. Hire guys like Adriel. And Adriel, if somebody listening here wanted to employ your services, which, by the way, please do. I cannot imagine a better thing to do than to get away from, or I would say add to, by the way, because you've painted a pretty bleak picture of our industry. I'm not going to lie. It's not wrong. But I will argue you've got to start somewhere. Start there. And when you've got those frameworks in place, when you do feel compliant, take it to the next level. And if they want to do that, Adriel, how do they get a hold of you?
Absolutely, yeah. So you can just hit our website, www.netragard.com. It's N as in Nancy, ETRAGARD.com. It deliberately spelled wrong. So, and you can contact us there, and we're happy to help any business, any size. It's like our slogan says, we protect you from people like us, and we really do.
I love it. And don't worry, guys, if you don't remember how to spell that, just go to the show notes. There'll be a hyperlink right there. Tap on that if you're on your phone, or click it on your computer, and we'll take you right to his website. So definitely recommend Adriel and his services. Guys, thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and sign off. This is go to unhacked.live if you want more information about the show, if you want to see our social media links, if you want to know who we are, the people behind the scenes, Mario, Bryan, we all have free assessments that we will do. This is just kind of a way to get you started on your journey. Take us up on that offer. But again, it's a starting point, and then we'll guide you through the rest of the process. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and sign off. Bryan, what's your sign off for the day?
My sign off for today is, hey, we're here. We're going to be your guide in your journey to improving your cybersecurity. Improve a little bit every day. Give us a call. We'll take care of securing your systems and helping you on your journey.
Perfect. Mario?
Yeah, if you guys are staying up at night worried about your business, let us help you stay unhacked.
And if you're not, you better call.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Adriel, again, thank you for being here. Any final thoughts or sign off?
No, I just say, focus on detection and response more than prevention, because that's what's going to save you.
I love it. All right. And I am Justin. Remember, listen in, take action, and keep your businesses, as Mario said, unhacked. See you guys next week.